This is the presentation for the Learning Management Platform for the ninth grade geography class. Participants are Callie, Shannon, and Jill. I am Jill Plummer, and I am the project manager. Our project was to create a platform for Callie Bowen to use with her high school students so that they could digitally access class materials outside of class. She has had problems with a lack of attendance in the past, and she wanted students to be able to find their assignments and resources on their own to foster independence. Callie also thought it would be helpful for all the students to be able to access practice activities and resources for more support and for review purposes. With the use of this platform, Callie could check for understanding, engage her students, and encourage learning. When we first started the process, we created the Slack channel on which to communicate. It was very valuable, and we used it throughout our process. We put it on our mobile devices, which kept us from missing important messages. I also found that it was a great place to quickly jot down a note on the go so we didn't forget it later. We decided to use the design thinking model with the steps of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Next, I created a document on which Callie could answer some empathy questions to get us started on the design. We continued to document the steps of the design thinking process in this document. To start the ideation step, we drafted a pro and con chart to compare the different learning management systems, which you will see later in Shannon's portion of the presentation. The document kept growing. We added our task list, which included a way to prioritize the tasks, define who was responsible, and add notes for clarity. As the project began to take shape, we added notes on exactly what the Google Classroom would be comprised of, and then fleshed out information that we would include in our presentation. We continued to communicate on a daily basis through Slack, and then decided we needed to have some synchronous communication through Zoom sessions. At first, when we were making decisions, it was pretty chaotic. We jumped in and did what we knew how to do. When we got a better understanding of our roles, we felt comfortable enough to voice our opinions and contribute ideas. Because this was a project for Callie and her students, many of the decisions came down to Callie's preference. When she was undecided as to what to do, Shannon and I would jump in with suggestions. When it came to what was challenging, the first problem we had was understanding what our roles were. We also found that working asynchronously was difficult. Sometimes one person would have to wait until a task was completed by someone else before she could proceed. Because Shannon and I were not the subject matter experts, it was difficult to know Callie's intentions, and we needed to ask many questions. That need eventually pushed us to having the Zoom sessions. We all agreed that without having a list of success criteria, it was difficult to know what to include in the project. When Anne provided the list, it was much easier to proceed. Our task list became very long and disorganized. We should have included actual dates on the list rather than number it by priority. We could also have employed a tool such as Trello. Our last challenge was that our communications were somewhat inconsistent. Sometimes we would message on Slack, and sometimes we would include a comment on our Google Doc. It was hard to be sure that thoughts were not overlooked because they were in two different places. We all agree that our Zoom sessions were indispensable. We were able to hash out ideas and clarify questions we had. We figured out that we were able to tag a specific person both on Slack and in our Google Doc to send an alert to that person to address something specific. Lastly, I think we made a great team. We made good suggestions, communicated well, and worked hard. There are several takeaways we have after working on this project. The first is that this is hard work. The empathizing step is crucial. Until all the details are understood and addressed, the prototype will not be satisfactory. Everyone must fill their role or the process becomes almost impossible. The design process is very messy, and without good communication and collaboration, we can't get the job done. The tasks on our list must be dated in order to be productive. Communicating digitally has its drawbacks. It's much easier to talk face-to-face and get nonverbal cues that help us make sense of the message. Lastly, team members must be dedicated.
So now I'm going to show you how this Google Classroom would work with an actual classroom setup and how it would correlate with what I'm doing in class. So all of the activities that we created for the design project are similar, if not exactly the same, to what I would be doing in class with students that are present, or I would be having them use these resources in class as well as if they were absent. 1 to 3 days, 2.5 days of Unit 1. Unit 1 is a bigger unit, so it's probably 12 days in reality, but we wanted to take a small section to be able to focus on the quality of the work that we were producing. And so day 1 is the introduction to creating maps, and this is extremely similar to what I would be doing in class. And so the main idea is, what does it mean to be a Mainer? This is a question that would be throughout the entire unit. And then the learning objectives are just for day 1 to 3 because they focus solely on maps. And so the instructions are written out for the students, and they are asked to watch this video. What would you do? Answer the Padlet, and then watch the Ed puzzles, maps, and maps parts. And so this would be something very similar to what I would have them do in class. If they were absent, they'd be getting the same skills and material as if they were in class. And so the only difference might be in classes, instead of having them do a Padlet, I would have them do a class discussion. So it kind of brings out that same qualities of what we'd be doing in class. And then the second part of day 1 is the different types of maps. And so in like the actual class that I'd be teaching, this would be a rotation activity with groups, groups of 3 to 4 students per group, and they would be moving around the classroom looking at different types of maps or looking at different slides of the slideshow. And so for this one, I would give them a printed out copy of the maps type activity worksheet. They would fill it out and then they'd put it in their folder to be graded with the unit. But in this instance, they would hand this in as well as the exit ticket into the Google Classroom. That way that I would be able to grade it and see their participation and how they used the types of maps and all of the instructions. The other thing that I put on here that I thought would be useful to students that weren't in class would be the maps types activity explanation, and this would be really good for students that didn't understand the activity as well. So this goes over each of the different types of maps that I laid out in the slideshow, and then it explains what each map would be used for and how you would use each map. And it basically explains the worksheet for them. So if they had a hard time understanding what I was talking about in class with the different map types in the worksheet, then they could come back and watch this video. So day 2 is the main maps assignment. And so this is the formative assessment. This is when they would print out 2 copies of the blank Maine map and 1 copy of the Maine County map. They have a list of identifications that they need to put on their different maps, and then I also provided them with an example map so that they know what kind of quality I'm looking for. Again, I have all of the steps to complete the assignment as well as a video instructing them on how to complete the assignment, and they have an exit ticket as well. We tried to recreate a digital way of creating maps, but it turned out that to meet the learning objectives, it was just a better way to have them print out the maps and actually do the assignment the way it was intended, the same as in class. So they would turn this in when they came back to class so that they could get credit for it. So the last part of day 2 is the Quizlet study set, and this would help them with learning the information in ways that we talked about in this class. So the retrieval practice, the space practice, they could use these Quizlet sets to kind of go over all of this information. This information would be on the test at the end of the unit, so it's important for them to have access to this now so that they can study it all throughout the unit instead of trying to cram before the end of the unit and before the test. I would talk to them and have a discussion with them about the importance of space practice and retrieval practice so that they know that that's the best way to study, that's the best way to get better results, and they would be able to understand that and realize that this is a benefit for them as well. And then day 3 is the Maine map quiz. So this is the quiz over the Maine maps assignment. They're able to use their Maine maps assignment on this quiz, so they're allowed to use only their paper map. So that's everything that we have for the classwork section. As you can see, it really aligns with the learning goals and the main question, and it really aligns with what I would be doing in class as well. So if students are absent, they would not be missing very much material from class.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ziegler, and I'm the instructional designer for the geography project. I just wanted to talk about the different tools that we selected and why we selected them. We ultimately landed on Google Classroom as the digital platform where Callie's going to keep all of her materials that are digital. We had taken a look at several different platforms. We listed pros and cons for each one. Ultimately, Callie landed on Google Classroom due to being a Google school district and that being a platform that students are already using in some of their other classes. So it just seemed to make sense for her. Um, I suggested that instead of highlighting the stream for the students, which is the problem she said she was having with Google Classroom last year, is students were having trouble navigating. I recommended she use the classwork tab instead, where she tags different topics to everything. So everything gets grouped by topic instead of it being like a Facebook stream and trying to find it in classwork. They can find the materials very easily when they know exactly what they're looking for by what unit. Callie created a bunch of how-to videos, which are fantastic. She created those using Screencast-O-Matic. She can use those for any of her classes. She created she found an ed puzzle in Introduction to Creating Maps to go over what the lesson's all about, the different content. It's in an ed puzzle, so she has quick data on whether the students watched the video, how they answered the questions, and we focused on a flipped classroom for the technique she wanted to use and the strategy she wanted to use in her class. And the reason why she went with flipped classroom is because we had watched the video in class. I had also read the Flip Your Classroom book by Bergman and Sams, and it just seemed to fit for the need that she had. And that need was having digital resources available for when students are not here or they're absent. Also having digital resources available for students who want to go back and watch the lesson again or have other resources to tap into when they want to practice a little bit more. So she used Edpuzzle, found one that was already out there, didn't have to reinvent the wheel, just kind of made it her own. Put that in as part of the first part of the lesson. Jill created the hook, and she made a Adobe Spark video encompassing text, images, video, audio, and hooked the learners in and then uploaded that to YouTube so it's available to anyone. So once the students are done watching the video, either as a class or individually, they would go into Padlet, and then the Padlet poses the question that the video ended with, and the students can have a digital conversation on here and put their feedback and their answers here. Once they've gone through that, different types of maps, Callie actually recorded another screencast on how that lesson would look. First of all, she put all of the steps in text-based, but she also created the screencast so students have two different options in how they're learning about how to do that assignment. She used Google Slideshow to put the images in there. She used Screencast-O-Matic again to make the screencast on how to do it. And then she uploaded that to Google Classroom. And some of the materials that they'll be using in the assignment is a Google Doc, which they can either type on digitally, or they can have a printed copy to write on it if they prefer to print it. Each lesson ends with, or each day ends with an exit ticket. So you can see we used Google Quizzes. Quick exit ticket, so Callie has everything all in one place, all the data, and she can do a quick snapshot of how her students did that day and what she still needed to work on the next day with them. For their assignment, we were going to use Scribble Maps. It was an excellent map tool. However, when Callie looked at the tool, it just didn't quite fit the needs of the assignment, and there's no point in trying to stuff a tool in using technology when the paper-based activity she was doing worked better and fit the curriculum better. So the resources are all digital for the students. They've got the worksheets that they need, the rubric is there, so they have the digital copy of all of it, but they'll have a printed copy in class so that if they are at home, they can print these off and complete it at home. Again, she has another video explaining how to do it. There's the exit ticket for the end of that assignment. We added a Quizlet study set based on the Make It Stick retrieval practice we learned about. We thought it was really important to have a tool in there for students to practice often. So that was another resource that we utilized. Back to the videos, we also utilized the videos because of the dual coding theory, and we learned about all the different things that go into processing, which is not just text or not just images, but combining them all so your brain really processes those. So that's another resource we used. And lastly, finishing up with a quiz that's digital using Google Forms. Again, Callie's getting all that feedback in one nice spreadsheet. And all the tools that we selected were selected because Callie's in a one-to-one Chromebook environment. So we selected tools that worked on Chromebooks. They're free to use, easy to create accounts or didn't need accounts. And the tools allowed for some consistency throughout the course because those tools can be used over and over again and weren't based on just one task.
Here is a list of the resources we referenced in the presentation.